Are you looking for some easy spring DIYs to make for your home? Then this video is for you. And for this first DIY, I painted a flower pot white. And once it was dry, I glued a piece of white faux fur on the side of the flower pot to make the body of a bunny. Next, I traced a roll of tape to make 2 circles out of yellow felt, and I also cut both of them out. And for the second circle, I made one cut that reached the middle and glued it into a shape of a cone. Then I trimmed the cone and glued it in the middle of the circle to create a hat. And I also glued a piece of twine where the cone and the circle meet. After that, I cut 2 ears out of white felt and painted where I wanted the inner part of the ears to be pink. Once the paint was dry, I put hot glue at the bottom of the ear and pinched the felt together and repeated the same steps for the second ear. Then I glued the hat on the flower pot, and I also glued the ears and a bow made out of twine on the hat. Now I'm going to make the face of the bunny by gluing on a pom-pom for the nose and 2 beads for the eyes. And then I made 2 oval shapes out of felt and painted both of them so they would look like feet. And once they were dry, I glued the feet on to finish this bunny decoration idea that I think turned out looking really cute. And now for this next DIY, I cut out a bunch of circles, and after that I took a toilet roll and folded 1 circle on the edge of it. Then I put Mod Podge on the edge of the circle and added another circle so they would be glued together. And I kept repeating the same steps until I was done with 1 row. And when I was done with 1 row, I added enough Mod Podge so another circle could go on it, and then I repeated the same steps until I reached the center. Once I reached the center, I glued a circle on the bottom and waited for it to dry. Now when it was dry, I took it off the toilet roll to finish making a rose, and I also took another rose that I made off of a cup. Then to go on to the next step, I traced the back of a frame onto a piece of scrapbook paper, and then I cut what I just traced out so I could put it into the frame. After I was done with that, I cut out some leaves out of green cardstock paper. And then I glued the roses onto the paper in the frame with hot glue. And I also glued the leaves underneath the roses to finish this paper flower frame art idea. And if you want, you can customize yours in any way that you would like. And now for this third DIY, I made a spiral out of gray yarn and glued it on the biggest part of a plastic Easter egg. Then I continued gluing and wrapping the yarn around the egg until I was done making the body of a bunny. Now when I was done, I cut 2 ears out of cardstock paper and painted where I wanted the inner parts of the ears to be pink. After they were dry, I put hot glue near the bottom of the ear and pinched it together, and then I repeated the same steps for the second ear. Then I glued the ears on the smaller end of the egg, and I also glued on a pom-pom, 2 beads for eyes, and a pink bow to make the cutest bunny. I also made another idea out of a plastic egg by repeating the same steps with the yarn, but I used orange yarn instead of gray yarn to make a carrot. Now when I was done with that, I cut and glued some green plants on the largest end of the egg. I also glued on a bow of twine to finish this carrot, and these 2 Easter eggs will make the perfect decoration ideas for Easter or spring. And now for this next DIY, I took some nautical rope and started by adding glue near the end of the rope and rolling it together. Then I repeated the same steps until I liked the size of the circle I was making for the head of a bunny. Now when I was done, I cut 2 pieces of rope that measured the same size and glued them on the circle in the shape of ears. After that, I traced the ears onto floral scrapbook paper and cut both pieces out. And then I glued the paper onto the back of each ear. And I also glued on a pink bow to finish this cute rope bunny idea. And if you want, you can turn it into a magnet by gluing on a magnet on the back of the bunny, just like how I did, or you can do whatever you would like. And now for this last DIY, I taped down some watercolor paper and painted 3 different colors and 3 different sizes of watercolor paint and waited for it to dry. Next, I drew and colored in the shape of a butterfly with a pen, but you can use whatever you would like to make the butterflies. And something else I did was that I painted the back of where each butterfly was on the paper. And once it was dry again, I cut out each butterfly. And I also glued the antennae of the butterfly on the back using paper that I colored to match the butterfly. Now when I was done with the butterflies, I traced the terrarium's top on brown cardstock paper and cut it out so it would fit on the bottom of the terrarium. Then I put the brown circle on the bottom of the terrarium, and I also glued moss onto it and trimmed some of the moss off. After I was done with that, I glued a rock onto the moss. And then I glued the largest butterfly that I made on the rock. Now the last thing I wanted to do was to hang the smaller butterflies in the terrarium by putting thread on the other 2 butterflies. And then I taped them on the inside of the terrarium so it would look like they were flying. When I was done, I put the terrarium together, and then I was done with this cute butterfly terrarium that you can customize in any way that you like. That's how you make these easy spring decoration ideas. In the comments down below, let me know which DIY is your favorite, and if you like this video, subscribe to see more videos. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!